So just to introduce myself quickly, my name is Romano Domingo. I'm an account manager for the Invigilator, and I represent the company called Eiffel Corp. So I'm an account manager for the Invigilator at Eiffel Corp, and I've been with Eiffel Corp for almost 3 years now. And part of my responsibilities is to assist institutions within South Africa and across Africa to maintain exam integrity, especially with our remote and online assessments. Then I also just want to thank our guest speakers, Dr. Pranavan, just for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us, and Nick as well. So with that said, I'm going to hand over to Nick to introduce himself quickly, and then I'm also going to ask Dr. Pranavan just to do a quick introduction. Thank you, Nick.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Romano. Good afternoon, everyone. Nice to be with you. My name is Nick Riemer. I'm one of the founders of the Invigilator application, come from an academic background myself, and together with the team created a solution that we believe was missing in the market and has allowed institutions across South Africa, now moving up into Africa, to write successfully remotely and do so in a way that maintains the academic integrity of assessment. So much, Romano.
Thank you, Nick. And over to you, Dr. Pranavan.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. And thank you very much, Romano, for the invite. Just to let you know that I don't work for Eiffel. I haven't met Romano or Nika. I'm an academic at the Durban University of Technology, and in my personal capacity, I'm here. And I believe in the software. And I'd like to share my experiences later on, Romano. So once again, thank you, and I hope I do justice.
Thank you so much, Dr. Pranavan. Just moving on with the agenda for today. So we already did the introductions. I'm just going to give a brief overview. I don't want to spend too much time on that. I really want to, that's why I also invited Dr. Pranavan, who's been an academic. So just to get a perspective from academic with regards to online assessments and the challenges. So basically the reason why we're here this morning is to, once again, just discuss academic integrity. And that's especially relating to our online or remote assessments. I think COVID has really disrupted education, especially since the rise of the pandemic. We've definitely seen with our assessments being moved online, our certifications being online, the many risks involved. And I think that has really affected us. And therefore, I would just like Dr. Pranavan just to share some of his experiences and his insights with regards to what academic integrity means to him, to the university where he's lecturing, with regards to any experiences with regards to student dishonesty, and just give us a bit of an idea of what he has been experiencing himself as an academic himself. Thank you, Dr. Pranavan. Over to you.
Okay. Thank you, Romano. Now, I was going to present a PowerPoint presentation, but I'm so tired of lectures and doing online, so I said I'd rather put my camera on and I will talk to you. And if you want to stop me in any point of the discussion, please, Romano, you can stop me, Nick, you can stop me, and you tell me maybe I'm going off track or I'm taking too long. And I noticed that there's 9 participants out here. And like earlier on when Romano called me, he says, we may not get a lot of people. And I told him, I said, even if it's 2 or 3 people, let's talk and spread the word. Because when I got to hear about the Invigilator software, I think there was a handful, less than 5 people, and I saw something that I liked and I went with it. Now, when I asked Romano, what must I talk about? He said, let's talk about why it is important and how you used it. And he hasn't scripted me in any way whatsoever. So I'm talking from my personal experiences. So just to let you know about our journey, this started about 2 years ago at DUT, where we noticed that there was dishonesty taking place with our assessments. And what we noticed was our marks were exponentially, it was so good. And we had gone into emergency remote teaching and learning. But what had happened was we excluded this aspect of assessment, and we were not alone in this. There were other universities that had adopted the remote teaching and learning and excluded assessment issues. In fact, we actually thought that it will last for maybe a month or 2 or 3 and everything will be back to normal. But when it started to take a little longer than that, and we noticed the dishonesty with our students, and sad to say that that's what happened. Then my dean started to say, what are we doing about this? People began to get concerned and say, hey, we need to do something about it, because we know that, well, I know I'm a very good lecturer and I can get 100% pass rate, but the others, it wasn't so. It just wasn't so that we had these excellent students producing answers that were so good that it made me wonder what my qualifications was. So I have to be honest. I know Nick is here, that Romano is here. We looked at other Invigilator software proctoring, and we did an international search. Again, you must think I'm a researcher, I'm an academic. So we went looking for proctoring software. And believe it or not, it's pretty expensive and it's pretty data intensive. So one of the major issues that we had to deal with in terms of our students at DUT was that, one, they don't have expensive smartphones. Well, I'm lucky I've got an iPhone. And they don't have unlimited data, so that was an issue. And some of the proctoring software that we had looked on, they needed a high bandwidth, and they had full video. In fact, that's what's happening right now. I have my video on, and I'm fortunate that I've got fiber at home. And we said, how and what are we going to do to ensure that we don't leave any students behind? We ensure that we are taking into consideration their limitations in their data, in their bandwidth, and their cell phones. So we went on an excursion to a fact-finding mission. And I don't want to mention any of your competitors out here, but I have sat in another, let's call it pilot test. By the way, I hold the distinct honor of being the very first academic at DUT to have used the Invigilator software. And I'm so happy Romano is sharing a screen out there. It says Durban University of Technology, University of Johannesburg, UNISA, Rhodes. By the way, Rhodes is that's where I met the academic who mentioned the Invigilator software. I don't want to mention her name. Maybe I don't have her right to do it. But because I had worked with her in the past, I said, hey, I think I have some recommendations going forward. Now, I just want to jump quickly because I don't want to take up too much of your time. But we, at this point in time, DUT has purchased software, and one faculty is running it, rolling with it, and they are training the students and the staff, and we want to roll it out to the rest of the university as well. Now, I can tell you, at any institution of higher learning, we have so much of red tape to follow. Oh, it's unbelievable. And one of the reasons for me doing this webinar is Romano and Nick were so patient in terms of, the red tape and the meetings and the pilot studies that they had to do, that I just could not say no to Romano's request that I need to share my experiences with you guys. So I mentioned to you about our integrity issues that we found with our students, and I mentioned to you our emergency remote teaching and learning. So we had to go into emergency assessments, and we changed all our assessments to continuous assessments. It wasn't any face-to-face examinations that we had. We had basically allowing students to take the test multiple times continually, and we noticed that there were issues of integrity. So we had students that were copying. We knew students were sitting together and working on an assessment, because if I had to ask students to put their cameras on, believe it or not, you'll get 5 in a room. We knew answers were similar, but we did not have proof to say this is what happened. Now, if I'm sitting with academics and I'm sitting with researchers, they will want to see quantitative data. What is happening? So I approached Nick and Romano, and we had a pilot test, and I had about 30 students, and we conducted the test. And believe it or not, I left it open. I didn't allow students to know that there will be any, I'll call it invigilating taking place or proctoring taking place or anything of that sort. And believe it or not, I had concrete evidence after the 30-minute test that there were students that were being dishonest. And the way I set my assessment, you have to know your work, or you don't know your work, or if you discuss the answer with someone, you'd be able to find out the answer. I know I was being a little bit of a cheater there. So that took place, and here it was. I had evidence to take to my faculty exco and say, this is what it is. And then they said, let's roll it out with our faculty. We had another pilot test being conducted, and that's when we decided to take it to the university. Now, we wanted to implement it such that it's not just one department that would implement an invigilation software. It would need to be, or proctoring software for that matter. We wanted it to be other departments as well. And let me tell you why. This was a selfish reason. Now, if I implemented invigilation software, proctoring software, and my marks dropped, my students were disadvantaged because here it was a deterrent to students. Then other lecturers who are not doing that, allowing multiple assessments, allowing the students to do as they please, and they were getting a higher mark, an average, let's say 90–95%, then it didn't look very good to me. So this was my, if I could call it, a selfish reason that I wanted everybody to get on board. And at the university where I teach, we service other departments. So let's say, for instance, the engineering students were being serviced by our faculty. And if they were not using the software and we were using the software, then we are disadvantaging our students and allowing engineering students to do as they please. So that was another reason that my line manager and my dean had said, listen, we can't do it on our own. We need to do it at an institutional level. Now, when we opened it out to the other faculties, believe it or not, one of the deans, they saw it, they liked it, they went, and again, Romano and Nick will bear me out and say, they went behind us and they went and did it, and we wanted to do it with the university. Now they have a contract in place with one faculty, and we try to extend that contract and share it out for the other faculties, but that's the story for another day. But long story short, we are implementing it. We have staff that are using it. We have students that are using it, and we are at a point where it is a deterrent to students. And that's the marketing that I use to my dean and to my fellow members of staff. I said, listen, this is a deterrent. And when we conducted the pilot study with our staff members, one of the qualitative results that came out was, there's somebody watching me, there's somebody that may be listening to me talking or asking another question, or that's verifying that this is who I am doing, the test. And another lovely point that you have, I know Romano and Nick may want to mention this a little later on, is the GPS location tracker. One of the staff members wasn't in DUT, they were overseas, and it picked up that a staff member was writing the test while out wherever, right? I don't want to mention the staff name or who it was because I'm getting them into trouble. I'm not sure if they had filled in a leave form or not. But that was another issue, so we could verify who and what it was writing the test. And the other important point that we could state about using proctoring software in general is that, we are assessed. When I say assessed in terms of the university, the quality that we produce. I'll give you an example. The engineering faculty, they have the Engineering Council of South Africa that accredits them. And one of the questions that they posed was, what do you have to mitigate against online assessments? And sadly, the staff at DUT could not say, we said, no, we don't have anything. And my response was, had we had a proctoring software in place, we could have said, yes, we got it. We may not tell them how much we're using it for every assessment or what the intensity and it is, but that's what we could have done. And also, I noticed there's UNISA out here, and I know they are using the software. If other universities are using it and we at DUT are not using it, then there's an issue, then there's a problem, I feel, because our piece of paper, our qualification at the end of it all must be valid. So that was the crux of the matter. That was the reasoning why we had gone the route that we had taken. So Romano, I think you gave me about 10 minutes, I think, like it. I'm trying to keep within that time. I don't mind, answering any questions from a personal point of view in terms of what and how we've done it and what we have, the experience, our challenges. One major challenge was the red tape that we had to go through in terms of the departments and the budgets and who pays for it, and whether it's from a department budget or from a faculty budget or from an institution budget. And another challenge was that the adoption by staff to get staff to do the little bit of extra work. They felt they had to learn the software, that to implement it beforehand, and all that goes with it. But the positive was that here you could tell the Engineering Council of South Africa, yes, we're using it. We could tell UNISA, oh, you're using Invigilator software. Yeah, so are we. So that was the bragging rights that we kind of had. I see your video is on, Romano. I'll stop and pause if there's any questions or clarifications, or maybe you'd like to tap me on the hand if I mention the competitors or anything of that sort.
No, not a problem, Doc. Thank you so much for your valuable input and thank you just so much for sharing your experience. Like you rightfully said, I think you've definitely been one of the champions when it comes to, with regards to the use of the Invigilator, or not just the Invigilator, but the use of any tool that can assist your institution and to overcome the challenges and the problems that we are facing as higher academic institutions. And that's especially with regards to, once again, the academic integrity of those assessments. Up next, I would like to welcome the CEO and founder of the solution, the Invigilator. He's also an academic himself, been in academics for a while. So this is really, like I always say when I do my presentations, the Invigilator it's not just a monitoring tool, but it's more of an educational tool. But as we continue with the presentation, we will also, you'll understand why I say that. But for now, I would like to welcome Nick, just to share why they've come up and how the idea of actually developing such a wonderful software that has now assisted over 17 institutions within South Africa, have done over 1.5 million assessments. So Nick, if you could please just share with us the idea of the Invigilator and just how it came about and your experiences as an academic yourself.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Romano, and thanks so much, Dr. Govender, for sharing your personal experience with the application. I think it's very important to note that 3 out of the 4 founders of the Invigilator come from an academic background. So together we've got more than 30 years experience in tertiary institutions and senior lecturing. And I think our story is similar to a lot of academics across Africa, in that when we were pushed into hard lockdown, we were on the search for solutions and technology that could potentially assist our students that we were lecturing and testing, continue writing and doing so, under exam conditions in the correct manner, so that we could maintain, the quality of the qualifications that we were issuing. And I think, as a team, there were many, solutions, international solutions that have been piloted that just didn't tick the boxes with what we needed here from an African context. And I think that, for us, number one was the cost. The solutions that were available were very, very expensive to utilize. And then, as Dr. Govender has mentioned, a lot of these solutions required lots amounts or huge amounts of data for students to possess, as well as laptops, constant internet connections. So for us here with load shedding, etc., it just was not going to work. So what we typically saw was any universities making use of this type of technology was only able to do so in very, very small pockets of the institution. And there wasn't really a solution on the market that allowed the whole university to move online. So I think for us, that was number one, sort of in identifying the problem, that there was just nothing that, that we could utilize within our institution. So if there was nothing we could utilize, let's put our heads together and see what we could create and what we could build. And fortunately, we have a very, very gifted and talented technology team that we were able to really bring to market a solution that was created by academics for academics. So it has the correct blend of technology as well as the academic side, because a lot of these solutions didn't ask, well, what do the students need? What do the lecturers need? Whereas now these questions were being asked, and more importantly, being answered in the solution that was introduced to the market. So I think, for us, the main limitation was the constant streaming. As soon as you stream students constantly, this requires the high-end devices. This requires the large amounts of internet as well as the costs associated. So for us, it was about introducing a tool to the market that could be allowed or could be used for your high-risk assessments, your mid-year, end-of-year examinations, but could also be utilized by the university for continuous assessment, for short quizzes, assignments, projects. We wanted to bring a project to the market that had diverse use cases, not just your high-risk examinations and the small pockets of students. So us, like Ramona mentioned, it was about introducing a product that would help universities move to more online, move to blended learning, move to continuous assessment, but could also, fill the role of your proctoring solution for the high-risk assessments. And because of that, we've been able to put large amounts or huge amounts of volume of students onto the application, as opposed to these small pockets of universities. So as Dr. Govend has mentioned, we have a lot of universities that have piloted the solution in the early stages, but then move it across to the whole institution because it makes sense from a price point, it makes sense from an educational tool point of view for the whole institution to make use of the solution, whether it's for the short tests, short quizzes, or for your end-of-year, mid-year examinations. I think we are seeing that from a customizability point of view, as well as the diverse use cases across the educational point of view and the educational tool point of view. So I think from my side, just as an overview, it was missing in the market for us. So therefore, we created a solution that would fill this. In 2020, towards the end of 2020, we launched the solution for the first time. It was version 1 of the solution, so very, very basic compared to where we've taken the solution to now. In 2021, we had just over 1.5 million tests and assessments run through the Invigilator application, with, as Ramona has mentioned, close to 20 South African institutions making use of the solution. So I think it's been a fantastic tool that universities are seeing huge benefit from. And as we grow as a company, we're now moving up into Africa, we're moving abroad, and we're very, very excited, to bring this useful tool to all of you across your institutions and see exactly how you need it and exactly how you need to use it. Because as we said, we're a dynamic team, we're a flexible team, and we make it work specifically for your use case. And thanks, Ramona. That's where I'm going to end it now, and we can go over in a little bit more detail a little bit later.
Thank you so much, Nick, for sharing that. And like you rightfully said, this is really a fantastic solution. And once again, we are here to speak about how this solution can actually help us overcome challenges that we are currently facing as higher education institutions. None of us have been immune to the pandemic. And I've spoken to many institutions across Africa, and we all basically share the same challenges. And just to quickly touch on some of the risks that are associated with online assessments or remote assessments, is that we've definitely seen with the rise of the pandemic that as institutions, we are challenged, and we identified, even though there's many risks, but we've identified 2 of the major risks that stare us in the face. And these risks are, as institutions, now that our students are doing the assessments online, remotely, not in a venue where we can monitor them, we all of a sudden open up ourselves to the risks of our students getting someone else to do the assessments for them. I don't know if you've ever spent time on the internet looking up for those sites where it's actually become a lucrative business, where other individuals will be right on behalf of our students to do the assessments for them. They will send it to the students. The students can just submit it as their own work, with our lecturers being none the wiser. And the second risk is, even if it is students from our institutions, how sure are we that our students are still not being unethical during those assessments? Now, the implications of that risk for us as higher educational institutions is to question the academic integrity of our qualifications. Now, once again, I'm so glad that Nick could join us this afternoon with regards to our webinar. When Nick and them founded this solution, as he also rightfully mentioned, they went into the market to look for available technologies that can assist them in overcoming those challenges that I've just spoken about. Now, what was available then was only software known as full proctoring software. However, just to go over the challenges that Nick has mentioned again, and Dr. Pranavan as well, full proctoring software require of our students to have high-end devices, fancy devices with certain specifications. When we looked at most of our student population, unfortunately, most of our students do not have these fancy devices. Another challenge that we found with regards to full proctoring software is that because it is a streaming service, it requires of our students to have constant, uninterrupted internet at a certain internet speed. Now, here in South Africa, we are plagued with load shedding. So what happens with full proctoring, if a student does an assessment online, they're being monitored, as you can see me through the camera right now. If there's any dip in the internet connection, if there's any power outages, that is it done for the student that did that online assessment. Now, we know our students are already stressing for the exam or the assessment that they have to do. It's not really necessary for them to worry about bandwidth, internet speed, or power outages. Now, the other disadvantage of that is because it is a streaming service, it's also very costly from a student's perspective when we look at the data costs. Just the known fact is that Africa as a continent is hit the hardest when it comes to data costs. And sometimes our assessments can really go from up to half an hour to a few hours. So it's really costly from a student's perspective to facilitate full proctoring software to be able to be monitored while doing that online assessment. Now, another point that we find with regards to full proctoring. So what we basically did is we took a well-known full proctoring software, took it to a university. We attempted a pilot with a few hundred students, and these are the challenges that we faced. Now, the last point that I want to mention is that full proctoring in itself is not a very feasible solution for our universities. When we think of the numbers of students that we have or the student population that we have, full proctoring charges universities per student, per hour, per assessment, per subject. So when you want to use it as a continuous assessment tool, that really is not a feasible solution for our institutions. So once again, we attempted a pilot with full proctoring software, but however, with our experience, we found that it is not a viable solution for the African context. Now, once again, referring to Nick and his fellow founders, it was important for them then to develop a solution that can firstly work within our context, and it should be a solution that all of our students can have access to. So it should be an all-inclusive solution. We don't want to leave students out just because they cannot afford the requirements or what is required to facilitate full proctoring. So one of our key prerequisites was that it should be an all-inclusive solutions, and all of our students should be able to use the solution to be monitored so we can protect the integrity of those online and remote assessments. Now, for such a solution to work within our context, we definitely had a few building blocks. Like I've mentioned, once again, referring to full proctoring, it requires of all of the student using full proctoring software to have a high-end device with certain minimum requirements. Now, when we looked at our student population, most of our students, fortunately, do have smartphones. So a requirement for us was that for a solution to work within the African context, it should be based on an entry-level smartphone. And the emphasis is really on entry level. In South Africa, we've got a Mobicel device. So basically, the requirement would be that the smartphone only has a camera. And then that's good. They are good to go. They can do the assessment. They can be monitored, and they can continue. So what I want to add to that is with the Invigilator, the reason, why we base it on an entry-level smartphone as well is because even if a student does not have a smartphone themselves, they can have access to a smartphone. So it's not device dependent. So even if I don't have a smartphone, Nick is my friend, I can use his smartphone for the duration of the assessment to do my assessment so that I can be monitored once again. Another requirement is seeing that it's based on an entry-level smartphone. We definitely find it necessary for it to be an application. So it is an application that can be downloaded from the various app stores. So you've got your Huawei, you've got your Android, and you've got your Apple stores. And it's definitely an application that takes up little space on the user's device. Now, most importantly, as I've mentioned, with regards to our challenges that we face around the continent with regards to constant internet connection. So we always have challenges, even if you have unkept Wi-Fi at home. Sometimes when we do presentations, you'll hear people ask to switch off their cameras to protect the bandwidth. Now, with full proctoring, if that happens, once again, if there's a dip, kicks the student out of the assessment. Now, key requirement for us was that for a solution to work within our context, it should not require constant internet connection. So that was a major requirement. And then if it does not require constant internet connection, then it becomes a data light solution for our students. Just to give you an example, the low data usage of the Invigilator, it uses about 2 megabytes of data when you do an online assessment, so that's on your LMS. And when you do a handwritten assessment, it takes about up to from 5 to 10 megabytes of data. So it's really low on data usage for our students. Now, something else that we've experienced with regards to full proctoring is that they provide us with the technologies, but oftentimes do not provide us the sufficient support to use these technologies to our advantage. So a requirement for us was that for a solution to work once again within our context, it should be user-friendly to both the lecturers and the students. We know that sometimes if we adopt technologies, if something's difficult to use, there's normally a resistance from our lecturers and our students to use such technologies. And I think, just lastly, another requirement for us was that the solution should be scalable. Once again, we wanted it to be all-inclusive. All of our students should have access to a solution. So we wanted it to be scalable, and a requirement therefore was that for a solution for in our context to work should be offered at a fraction of what full proctoring costs. And that brings me to the end of just the requirements for a solution to work within our context.
Perfect. Thanks so much, Romano. So I think, as Romano has mentioned, this obviously comes to students in the form of an application through an entry-level smartphone. So any entry-level smartphone, the students can download the Invigilator application and can utilize it. We use a very, very basic entry-level device like a smartphone to collect invaluable data, advanced data, and we run it through advanced artificial intelligence to make informed invigilation decisions. But we do so in a way that the whole institution can utilize it as an all-inclusive solution. Thanks so much, Romano.
This is just to touch on the integration with regards to your LMS. Just to let you know that the Invigilator runs parallel to any learner management system. So how it is then integrated to your learner management system is through the QR. So how that works is the QR code is generated once the lecturer sets up the parameters surrounding to safeguard the online assessment. So that takes them about 5 to 10 minutes. Once they're done with that, they save, they generate a QR code, and this QR code can then be embedded onto your online assessments, or if it's written assessments, you can still download that and then paste it onto your written exams. We're looking forward to discussing online assessments with you in future assessments and just protecting the academic integrity all around our universities, especially across South Africa. I think what Nick also mentioned, this is a solution that was specially developed in Africa for Africa, and this is a proudly African solution. With that said, I'd just like to thank our speakers as well. Nick, thank you so much. Dr. Pranavan, thank you so much. And I just wish everyone a wonderful day further, and we'll definitely speak soon again, and I can't wait for that. Thank you so much.